Microchip released the PICKIT2 starter kit many years ago, but then they discontinued it. But they made it open source so you can recreate it, which I did. And you can use it with 8, 14, or 20 pin PICs because they're all compatible in the same socket. And it makes it easy to get these with their free sample program where you can get free PICs like I showed in the previous video. So this is a great way to get started with PICs for very low cost, and I'll explain it all on today's Chuck Hollabuck's Electronic Products. Now, if you're not familiar with the PIC microcontroller, it's just another family of 8-bit microcontrollers similar to what's used in the Arduino module. Although those are AVRs, these are PICs. And I actually used the PIC microcontrollers in my book, Beginner's Guide to Embedded C Programming, along with Volume 2 and Volume 3. I wrote those years ago. And you can still get these microcontrollers. In fact, you can get free samples like I talked about in this video that I'll link to up here and also in the description below. And there's a lot of different sizes. 8-pin, 14, 20-pin, 28, 40-pin, and there's so many variations of features within those devices. But a lot of people suggest start with a very simple 8-pin microcontroller, which again, you can get for free in the sample program. And it's the same size as a 555 timer that a lot of people are already familiar with. It can fit in the same socket. It's not the same pin out, but it allows you to program different functions. Like I've actually replaced 555 timers with programmed 8-pin PICs. Now, if you designed something and wanted to turn it into an electronic product, you can get these in bulk for well under 50 cents, depending on which PIC microcontroller you choose. But the 8-pin PICs go down to less than 50 cents for many of the latest devices. Now, if you're working with an 8-pin PIC, it won't be long before you run out of I/O pins. You're going to want more I/O pins, especially if you're driving an LCD or a bunch of sensors. Well, instead of tearing everything up, the 14-pin and 20-pin are pin compatible with the 8-pin. The top 8 pins, or all 8 pins of the 8-pin, line up with the top 8 pins of the 14-pin and 20-pin. And so that's why the low pin count demo board has a 20-pin socket, but will accept the 8-pin, 14-pin, and 20-pin microcontrollers. Now, if we look at a close-up of the low pin count demo board, it's got a 20-pin socket, but in the silk screen, it designated which pins are part of the 8-pin, which are 14-pin, and which are 20-pin. And what this does is the 8-pin gives you port A, RA0, RA1, RA2, RA3, RA4, and RA5. Those are the I/O pins. They're also the connections to the programming port, which is where you would connect the PICkit2, PICkit3, PICkit4, PICkit5, whatever you're going to program it with. And then power and ground are up here as well. So no matter what chip you use, the programming connections and the power and ground are connected the same. Now, when you go to a 14-pin, you also pick up port C, RC0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So it's 6 extra I/O pins. And then when you go to the 20-pin, you pick up RC6 and 7, so the final 2 pins of port C, and then you pick up RB4, RB5, RB6, and RB7 I/O pins of port B. And then this board also has a switch for LEDs and a potentiometer. And these are all connected to those extra pins of the 20-pin. I think this one might actually connect to one of the RA0 pins, RA1. But this header on the side is actually an expansion header, so you can jumper wires to a breadboard or whatever you want to build. And this has all the 14-pin socket pins, power and ground, and then it works its way up to cover all the pins, all of port A and all the port C that's part of the 14-pin. So it's another way to expand this. So this is a great board to start with. You can start programming with 8-pin and then eventually go to 14 or 20, or just start with the 20, use some of the features down here, and then expand through this header here. And then you can always shrink down to a 14 or 8-pin if you find you don't need all those I/O and want to produce something that you can actually sell. Now, when Microchip discontinued this, it really kind of messed me up because I had people still buying the book, but they couldn't buy the hardware unless they went on eBay, and it was really going up in price. It got ridiculous. So I designed a copy of the board with a few minor changes so that my readers, the people who bought my book, could actually reproduce the hardware that was used in the book. Now here's a blank version of the Microchip board. that I showed all populated. This is a blank version, and this is my copy. Now, the blank version of Microchips had gold-plated pads. Mine has just silver-plated pads, so it was a little cheaper. And I made a few other minor changes. The header up here, I put the box around the pins instead of on the side of it, so mine's a little closer to the edge than theirs. And I use the same silk screen where I show the 8-pin, 14, and 20 pin. But what I did do different is they didn't label these pins on the side, the expansion port. I did. So now you know which pin goes where when you use it with a breadboard. That helped out a lot. What I didn't do and should have done is label this to what pins it goes to. But if you follow the traces or you look at the schematic, the switch actually comes up here and goes to RA3. So you can access that from the 8-pin part. The LEDs are all connected to RC0, RC1, RC2, and RC3, which is part of the 14-pin, so you can't control an LED from the 8-pin, but the potentiometer does go up here to RA0. So the 8-pin can read a potentiometer. So you can read a potentiometer or switch. You just have to wire a jumper wire either from here to here, or in expansion, put an LED over here. They should at least maybe had one, but I think they want to keep them on the same port. So I didn't change any of that. It's all the same connections as what's here. The only thing is I just added the labels and moved a few things around just a touch. At my main website, lproducts.com, I have all my books and all the supporting material for those books. I'll put a link to this in the description below, but you can get all the information you need to get started programming PIC microcontrollers with my books and the PICkit starter kit. Patreon Gold members also have access to these books in a PDF format for free as part of their membership. On the lower portion of that page is the PICkit Plus software for the PICkit2 clone that I recommend, and also the Gerber files in a .zip file format you can download and get them made at PCBWay.com. PCBWay.com offers 10 boards for $5. It's a great deal. All you got to do is design your circuit boards, upload the Gerber files, tell them what details you want, the quantity, and you get an instant quote right on the side over here. So it's $5 plus shipping. So in my case, it's about $27 to get those boards. And if you want it assembled, they offer turnkey, kitted, or combo of the two. So they'll actually build the board for you with their low-cost assembly services. So if you're looking for this type of service, check out PCBWay.com. And once you have your own boards, you can 3D print this stand for it, where you put the board on one side and a breadboard on the other, just like this guy. So here's a populated board with a breadboard on the other side. So now you can use jumper wires from an expansion header to this larger breadboard area. And that's better than what I had in my second book, where I just put a breadboard area in the board itself. This is much cleaner, much easier with more space. And because you build the board yourself, you don't have to stick with the red LEDs that they used. You can put different colors. Like I put a red, yellow, green so I could do a traffic light, and then a blue for something else. So you're really not limited. You can do whatever you want. Once you have your boards and you populate it and make your own development board, then all you need is a programmer. And the PICkit2 is still my favorite because it's open source, and also because you can get the PICkit Plus software, which will support all the latest and greatest PICs, plus the early ones, which some of the boards like the Snap, this will not support the early versions that don't support low voltage programming. Where this thing will do low voltage and high voltage programming, so you can reset any configuration bits, which you can't do with the low cost Snap. So that's why I still like this one. And the fact that you can get a clone like the PICCIRCUIT clone like this, which is a PICkit2 in a nice package with a cable, this is the one I recommend. And they also sell that PICkit Plus software in a GUI form. So you can get that for about $12 or $13 in addition to the programmer, and then you've got the latest and greatest of everything. So you'll have your own board, which I gave you the files for free. You have to get them made somewhere. And you got to pay for the programmer, but you can get chips for free from their microchip sample. And you can get GCBASIC, which is the compiler that I recommend in many of these videos, because GCBASIC is easy to understand. It's a basic type format, but it has a lot of the features like C has, but it produces pure assembly code. So it's very, very efficient. And best of all, like I said, it's free to download. You just go to GCBASIC.com and you got a free compiler. So for a very low cost setup, make your own boards, get your own programmer with the PICkit Plus software, get the free microcontrollers like I showed you in a previous video, and then get the GCBASIC compiler. You've got everything you want to get started. And I'm thinking about doing another book, but focusing on GCBASIC for all the same projects. So look for that in the future. Now, years ago, when I wrote my book, we didn't have all this. I didn't have a 3D printer at home that I could print a base like this. I couldn't get boards made as easy and as cheap as you can today. Getting a PIC programmer with the PICkit Plus software so it supports all the different devices, that wasn't available either. And there's so many more PICs that have come out, and like I said, you can get free samples of those. And then GCBASIC, which was around, has gotten a lot better as well. But on top of all that, you can now go to a ChatGPT or any AI engine like Claude, and it will write your code for you. So just having this base, which a lot of it is free that you can build, especially if you're a tinkerer or a maker, and now go to AI, it'll write your code for you. It's going to make everything so much easier. So using these little bit 8-bit microcontrollers and little projects that you may 3D print a robot or whatever you want to make is so much easier and so much better than it was years ago when 8-bit was more popular. But that's why I say this is a great tool in your toolbox, and it's really easy to get started, and I'm here to help. I want to give a shout out to my Patreon supporters who make this channel happen. They are the backbone. I couldn't do it without them. Thank you. Thanks for watching. If you like what I'm doing here, maybe check out some of the other videos popping up. If you want to help support the channel, Patreon is the best way to do it. And if nothing else, click on that CHEP logo and subscribe. I'll see you next time right here at Chuck All About Electronic Products and Filament Friday.